Good morning, Let Your Culture of Safety line team. Welcome aboard. We got a really interesting guest speaker today, Mr. Caleb Thompson with Timpson Training Systems. He's going to be presenting, and the presentation is awesome. Right here. Okay? And you're going to enjoy this. Mr. Caleb, he's got a unique perspective, and the reason why he has a unique perspective, he's got a lot of experience in the field in different ways. He's what we'd call a critical thinker, which he'll be talking a little bit about that today, which is really interesting. He told me, he kind of briefed me on his topic about a month ago when he told me his topic title, and we were talking, he was explaining what he's going to be talking about, and I was like, let's go, man. This is awesome. So this is going to be really neat. But real quick, Let Your Culture of Safety. Some of you already know we're at 15,000 plus partners throughout the land. And so this national coalition is growing, and it's just incredible with National Rural Electric Cooperative Association adding their logo to the ECOS partnership logo, which I'll make that announcement maybe Monday. I'll probably make that announcement. And on our social media platform, Let Your Culture of Safety, go to letyourcultureofsafety.com. You can go to LinkedIn, and you can also go to Facebook. Check out all the resources. A couple things I want to let you guys know that's been very recent, and a lot of folks don't know this, but you are able to resource all the speakers of Let Your Culture of Safety, which they are the very best in this land. And you are able to resource them. Just contact me, Brent, at bierermeters.com. Tell me what topic you're looking for, and I'll give you a list of folks and that I know that'll be good, and you can talk to them and make your decisions. Caleb's one of those folks that you're going to want to definitely resource for sure. Also, another thing that's interesting with the Let Your Culture of Safety, I had a question asked just yesterday, a very important question, and they were curious as far as how this and that would work in this and that scenario. Well, because we have so many folks that are speaking and professionals and experts in this industry, I was able to link them up with some folks to give them answers. So you are welcome to, again, resource them for presentations, for training, third-person training, third-person party training. I think is one of the most valuable ways to show your employees that they are valuable. You're investing in them. You don't always want them to see the same face with the same monotone voice, training your same people. You got to stir it up a little bit. At least every quarter, bring a third-party person in, at least. Highly recommend. So anyways, let's get started. Mr. Caleb, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah. So Caleb's been here. This is his third presentation. All three are, this one I know is already going to be great. But Caleb, give us a little taste on how you were shaped and molded to today.
So, I came up early on in the inside as an inside electrician. Late 90s, kind of came up with some small companies, some hard men, working to death. And, after I got through high school, I went through an apprenticeship program. And then in the early 2000s, I started right into the utility industry. When I started in that utility industry, it was a lot of older guys, 30, 40, even 45 years of experience. And those guys had a different mindset than what I was raised on and how we kind of perceived things, and they passed a lot of that on to me. So I got a taste of that before they all retired, and that's a big thing that's happened in this industry across the country and worldwide. There seems to be, there's possibly like a hiring freeze, right, across the country. Mm-hmm. So once they started hiring new people, all the experience walked out the door, but that experience is a different type of experience than what we have. And I've been honored and blessed throughout the years to be in the role of just a journeyman lineman, a driver, and even in leadership positions. And then with Timpson as an employer and being able to hire people and kind of take a look, and also to just travel around the country, talk to thousands of different linemen, managers, CEOs and ask them what their biggest challenges are in the industry and how do they think they can overcome it. So, you know, I got a lot of that information I'm going to be bringing in today.
Nice. Yeah, Caleb's training, you're going to see us one slide. He showed my wife and I, we had dinner and talking a little bit last night, and he's got this one slide of the map of America over his travels in the last 12 months. So last August to this August. And when he showed my wife and I the photo of what you're about to see, you couldn't even hardly see the United States. All you could see is all these pin drops, and it made the shape of the United States, not the map, the pin drops. So this is going to be really neat. He's bringing a lot of experience to the table. And Caleb, in your training, what is maybe the one biggest saying? I'm sure you're going to touch on it. What is the one biggest saying that's lacking today in our industry?
Well, there's a couple things, but connection is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. The connection that we have, where we're passing energy back and forth, and you know, things like smartphones and technology have really stripped us of that and has started to eat away at the fabric of who we were, and it's, you know, that connection has been lost.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. So anyways, hang on to your seat. Make sure your hands and your feet are inside where you're sitting. There's going to be a lot of things passing by really fast here, and make sure you're buckled up. Get ready. Caleb, thank you, brother.
So yeah, as Brent said, I'm Caleb Thompson from Timpson Training, and just to give you a heads up, he let the gnats loose on me today, so if you see me waving my hands, it's because I'm getting attacked here. Do we have what it takes to do better, right? And I think that when I'm looking at this, one of the key words is we and not you. And the reason that I came up with this is traveling around the United States from place to place, talking to different linemen, and you know, I do a lot of on-site post-journey level training, whether it revolves around rigging, grounding, transformers, power factor, basic electricity, or getting into more advanced level things. I do it, and we do it on site, and a lot of times we have hands-on equipment, so we're not just talking about it and writing it on the board, we're showing it. So in my travels, I get to talk to a lot of different linemen, a lot of different managers, a lot of different directors, CEOs, and whether that's a co-op, a big utility, a smaller utility, a training facility, a JATC for the IBEW, which we do a lot of work for, or you know, a little OTEC, just a little, you know, public utility inside of a small town like out west. You know, I asked them what their biggest challenges are and how they could overcome them, and all of them, almost all of them, nationwide and including South America, have the same exact feedback, the same thoughts. Culture is a problem, and you know, the management and upper management team will see it one way, and the workers see it a completely different way, and they can't meet eye to eye on it. And you know, we're both right and we're both wrong at the same time, right? There's always a better way. So just some reference material I wanted to go over. If we look at this, the ideal team player, that's from Patrick Lsnw, and he has a series of books that follow, you know, how to have a better work environment. And you might ask, well, what does this have to do with safety? And the reality is, if we work better together, if we're a better team, we're ultimately going to be safer. If we erode things away like trust, that's going to be a big problem. And you know, that's one of the biggest problems I see in the industry, is trust has been eroded. And you know, we come up with these metrics for measuring safety, and none of them are even close to being correct. And I'll tell you, you know, I've had some safety managers get quite upset with this topic that I'm talking about, and they'll ask me, well, you know, what is your experience level to be able to talk on this if you're an electrical worker? And my experience level is just that, traveling around the country, talking to different people and getting a lot of feedback on what these issues actually are. And this is that slide he was talking about. And that's just so you can see that these are the places I've been and the people that I've talked to, you know, whether it's on the East Coast, just up and down constantly from shop to shop to shop, or out west and everything in between. There's a little hole right here where, you know, for some reason I haven't been, but you know, all the way down here in South America, it's the same thing. You know, they think a little bit differently. Their culture is a little friendlier, but when it comes to the work, that culture shifts and changes just like it is here. So it's a pretty incredible thing to see that this problem doesn't just exist with us, it's everywhere. So culture, right? Culture is one of the biggest things that we have to deal with. And what I see just from talking to people, and a lot of people aren't even aware of it, we have this culture of being very quick to point out negative things and very slow to see anything positive, if at all. And the question is, as you can see on the screen, how can I give somebody constructive criticism under those conditions, right? You can't. It's only criticism. And when I'm only ever being criticized, I'm never growing. That trust gets eroded. And you know, it's worth saying that the culture just isn't bad in that area. The culture is bad in a lot of different areas. It seems like there's a war sometimes going on between older and younger, management and workers, especially when you get into the union side of it for utilities where they're more inside workers. There's not a whole lot of trust that goes on between those two. And then, you know, the big thing is that we can look at for takeaways on that. Are we humble? Are we hungry? Are we smart? And, you know, I'll go into that a little bit later. And do we have what it takes to change those things? Because believe it or not, all three of those topics, if I'm not humble, if I'm kind of egotistical, or if I'm not hungry, like maybe I'm a little more on the lazy side, I don't like to do a whole lot, or, you know, if I'm not smart, meaning I don't have good people skills, you know, I'm not very empathetic, I don't understand how my words and behaviors are affecting other people, all of those things can be changed. I've seen it happen. I know it can happen. And back to this book, The Ideal Team Player, to me, it's one of my favorite books if you haven't read it. And especially if you're in management, a safety person, or some kind of leadership position, whether you're in the field or out of the field, I highly recommend reading this book. It's a fable, a business fable, and he is an incredible writer. He has an incredible way of explaining things, and he brings a lot of things to light that we can see on a day-to-day basis where, you know, there's problems that exist and we can't quite put our finger on it. And in this fable, he will pull that out of you. And you can read this on Audible and just listen to it in your car. I'm telling you, it's a good read. And if you read this, you're going to want to read the rest of his books, which also go along the same lines. So humble, you know, without my team, I'm just another person. With my team, we are incredible, right? That's like an example of something somebody would say, and, you know, gives encouragement. A humble person is quick to point out, you know, how well his team is doing without thinking about himself. You know, not thinking less about himself, but without thinking about himself. And hungry, you know, hungry doesn't just mean that I'm a hard worker. It means that I'm going to go above and beyond, that I look forward to my work, that I enjoy what I do. I'm passionate about it. I have passion behind what I do. And that, believe it or not, is one of the hardest attributes to change in a person. If you don't have passion in what you do, it's hard to get that. It's hard to fake it, which is where a hiring process is really important, right? We want to make sure that we're getting these people that are passionate about what we do. And people smart, of course, we just talked about that. It's you know, I know that on this one in particular, over the years, I have heard people say, older guys and guys say in general that are just miserable to be around. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to get a job done. And, you know, when you have to work with a group of guys day in and day out, especially in the utility industry, you might be working 16 hours a day for a month with these guys. If that's how you want to live your life, miserable, and not happy, yeah, so be it. But don't do it around me. You know, I agree that if I'm a boss, that my primary job is to lead. My primary job is to lead, not be a best friend. But if you lead correctly, humble, hungry, good people skills, ultimately those people will be your friends anyway, and they will respect you for it. And that's really, really important for teamwork. When you have miserable people on the crew, what ends up happening is, instead of your crew focusing on the task at hand, we end up focusing on things that align more like resentment. You know, we're up in the air in a bucket truck working on something dangerous, and you have the guy cussing under his breath because of the way I just talked to him, right? And I'm just going to say me, because listen, I've been in the utility industry for a long time, and I've made these mistakes. I've behaved poorly. I've learned. I've learned the hard way, and they're valuable lessons. I don't regret them, because I've got to see what the change that takes place in a person like myself, where you go from being that angry, miserable person on a crew because you think that's how you're supposed to be, you're full of ego, to being humbled over and over and over again, and starting to understand that, hey, if we're going to work as a group, if we're going to work as a team, there needs to be cohesion there. And you can't have that if you're miserable. You just can't. So, it's funny when we look at these, if one of these is missing, we can easily point that out, right? Like if you're not humble, that's pretty easy to see. You have an arrogant person, thinks they know everything, which is basically the line industry in itself. And hey, look, I'm talking myself included. Our industry kind of promotes big egos. We do a dangerous job. We're high up in the air. It's fun. The public's watching us, and we get the lights back on. So, it's pretty difficult not to pat yourself on the back every once in a while. And it shows. And again, myself included. Hungry. You can immediately tell when someone's not hungry, right? If they're humble and they have good people smarts, but they're not hungry, those are the people that, wow, I mean, he's such a nice guy though, and he's so humble. They just stick around forever. Not necessarily ambitious, but people smarts, that's the one right there. That one right there will erode a team and a crew down to nothing. It will whittle it away to nothing. If you walk around, you're miserable, you talk nasty, you're a jerk, you're not encouraging, you don't understand how your words affect other people, no empathy, that's a big one. And that can be changed. It's easy to change that. That's one of those things where we can kind of fake it till we make it. You just encourage yourself. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be nice. The right people for the job. This is where things get a little controversial, and I've been told in the past by different managers that, what do you know about this? Well, I can tell you what I know. I'm an employer and I employ people. And and here's the question: are we hiring to serve a metric? Is that our sole purpose in hiring? And or are we hiring because we need people and we also want to serve that metric, right? Because we can do both. If we need people, we don't just hire to serve the metric, we can hire to serve that metric. And whether that be a specific demographic of people, or maybe we need more women in the shop that we're in because it's all men, right? I understand that. I have no problems of that at all. But are we pushing those people through training to uphold that metric, right? That's the real question. And I can tell you, I was the lead trainer at a utility for a lot of years, and we weren't quite there, but we were certainly headed in that direction. And I don't think that the people who are in charge were purposely causing a rift. I don't even know if they really knew that that's what was taking place. They have this metric that they need to meet. And it's just plain and simple. They need to meet it. So, the question that I always had for those people is, are the people in charge of this hiring process, the recruiters, HR, and the people who are interviewing. Are they aware of the day ins and days out and day outs of this job? Do they understand the risks involved with it? And if so, is that the most important thing, or is the metric the most important thing? And I'm going to say we again, because I'm an employer, and I work for a lot of big utilities, and just like everybody else, getting paid and being able to feed my family is pretty important. So, I work around the country with the IBEW and a lot of big utilities, and that can come with certain stipulations of things that they would like to see. So the big question is that I have, again, what's the most important thing? Is it safety, making sure we have the right person for the job, or the metric? And I just, anybody who's watching this, especially if you're in a newer management position, or maybe if you're higher up, or if you're another business owner like me, and you think about your hiring practices, think about that for a second. How are we doing this? Are we doing this correctly? Training. Who do we have doing training? How much experience do they have? Because, another big thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of smaller training facilities popping up throughout the country, which is, I think it's a pretty incredible thing, because we need linemen and we need better training, right? It helps with the amount of linemen that we need on a year-to-year basis if we have, say, a pre-apprentice program where they can go in and they can get that 15 weeks in with a good group of people, and they come out into an apprenticeship program. They already know how to climb. They already have a good idea of the job. They already know how to operate a digger derrick. They're already a good ground hand, and we can just throw them into that apprenticeship program and they're already a step ahead, rather than they come into the utility or a contract company and we invest all this money in them, and then they end up not being able to do the job. Or worse, they end up not being able to do the job, but the utility needs them anyway, for one reason or another. For one reason or another, they need them, and we keep them. And what happens then, right? Then what happens is we either get somebody who doesn't want to be in the job, and they invest tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars into this person, and then they leave and go to a different department, or they leave altogether, or they invest this money. And what are the unintended consequences to this if we don't have the right people for the job? If we're not thinking about things like humble, hungry, smart, if we're not thinking about things like passion in what we're doing, what are the unintended consequences? And, the unintended consequences is incident, fatality, and maybe not that person, but somebody on the crew. And I think we have a perfect opportunity right now with all of us, especially electric culture of safety that has been developed here, where we can get together and we could share these ideas and say, let's make a change. Let's change. Let's vamp this up a little bit. What can we do more? And, so when we're looking at the training, these new training facilities that I see some of them were coming up with, hey, we're getting ready to open up this new training facility. I'm looking for some trainers, minimum 4 years experience, a Class A CDL, and is willing to teach people. Well, 4 years, no, that's not good. 4 years is not going to cut it. 4 years is that guy who still has the chip on his shoulder, full of ego, and is used to getting involved with things like normalized deviance, right? Or they just don't know the correct procedure and they think they do, then they pass that on. And what we need in those training facilities is somebody who is a seasoned person, somebody who's worked in the field for years, maybe decades, who's done trouble work, storm work, who's been a troubleman, who's been involved in training in some aspect over and over again throughout the years, who has passion behind it and wants to share his experience with other people, or her, right? That's who we need as those trainers. And there are training facilities in the United States that have those people, and you can tell because they stand out. I mean, they really stand out. And does it cost more? Of course it does. But a 15-week pre-apprentice program is a pretty profitable business to get into. Are we running through PowerPoints, documents, modules just to check boxes when we're given training? In other words, whether it's a lockout, tagout procedure or a new policy that we're rolling out, are we rolling this out just for the sole purpose so I can get that employee's signature and check a box so if something happens I can say they were trained on it? No liability here, right? I don't agree with that. I think that anytime we have a new procedure, and especially lockout, tagout, there needs to be some in-depth training where we're showing real life demonstrations of why, not just how. Because if we look at the bottom there, are we demonstrating the why? At a lot of utilities these days, you'll even hear older guys say, you don't need to know why, son. Here's how you do it. Just don't do it. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that ends up happening when we live our lives like that is we start to become more and more and more rule-based instead of critical thinkers. And that's a problem, right? That's a big problem. Statistics for safety. I love this one. Goodhart's law states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, right? And this is one of those things, and forgive me for anybody who loves to talk about statistics in the industry of safety and training. You know who you are, and I apologize. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here, but we will have these metrics in the industry for safety and incidents, and it'll be, man, we're doing great. Incidents are way, way, way down. But unfortunately, fellas, fatalities are up. Well, I mean, if you really think about that, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to put together that if those two statistics don't fit together very well, one of them's probably wrong. Now, there is an exception to that rule. Somebody who's completely rule-based, right, who has no critical thinking skills, is likely, if they have an incident, for it to be a fatality. Somebody who is a critical thinker, it's likely to just be an incident. And here in the United States, although we're becoming more and more rule-based, I believe in my heart, just by traveling around, talking to people, listening to people, that we're still critical thinkers. So when that measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And I'm just going to read it. This means that once a metric is used as a target for performance, people will find ways to manipulate or game the system to meet that target, often at the expense of overall quality and effectiveness. Now, here's the important thing that I wanted to get into with this. Who among us are manipulating or gaming the metric? Are we even aware that we're doing it? Right? So, management, workers, what could be a way that we're not aware that we're gaming the system or changing it? And I could tell you, it would be all the way back up here. Oop, this way. Right here. Do we have a culture to quickly look for the negative and slow to see the positive? Right? That changes that metric. That changes that metric in a big way. And you might be asking yourself how, and I'll tell you, it changes the metric because if you're a safety guy, a manager, and I'm on the crew, and maybe I'm the worker out in the field, maybe I'm a union guy, you're my boss. I don't necessarily trust you because you're always quick to see the negative that I do and you never point out the positive things. I hear that you're on your way out to the job to do a safety check. One of my friends calls. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hurry up, get everybody together, tell them you're coming out, and we're going to change our behavior while you're there. I'm going to pretend that I'm different than I normally am. Even if my normal self is completely safe, I'm not going to be my normal self because there's no trust. If there's no trust, I'm not going to be honest with you. And if I'm not honest with you, you don't have an accurate representation of what's happening on that job. And we'll take it a step further. We have a near miss. Something almost happens. We just narrowly escape a hazard or a serious incident, or maybe even narrowly escape a fatality. I don't trust my boss. What do you think we're going to do? Think we're going to turn that in? No. No, we're not. We're going to keep that to ourselves. What happens on the crew stays on the crew. You hear it more and more often. Now let's take that a step further. A minor incident. Somebody slips standing in a bad position on a machine and gouges their shin open, and maybe they need to go get a couple stitches. That'd be an incident, and we have these boards on the wall at the shop that says 183 days without an incident, just so everybody can see. And when I have that incident, then everybody can look at me. I'm the one that messed it up, right? What do you think often happens under those conditions? And you know what? I've talked to managers across the United States about this, and some of them will say it absolutely does not happen in our shop. It cannot happen. We would catch them and there would be serious consequences. Well, they're wrong. You know how I know? Because I was a lineman for 20 years. I went on storms. I talked to other contractors. I've worked with other contractors. I've slept under a circus tent like this in fields with other contractors, or we broke bread together, or we, trekked through swamps together and up the sides of mountains dragging wire, sweating, hurting, but proud. And I can tell you, it's the same everywhere. If there's no trust and there's a minor incident that can be easily covered up, it gets covered up. It's not getting reported. The things that get reported are things where you can't get in trouble, like a bee sting, right? Something as ridiculous as a bee sting. I got stung by a bee. I need to turn this in, right? I can't get in trouble for that. Bee stung me. Or, somebody drives through the work zone and their mirror hits me. Well, it's their fault. They drove right through the work zone. I'm going to turn that in. But if it's my fault, and I think I'm going to get in trouble, that's what I've seen in the industry. So that right there changes that metric. That changes that metric in a big way. And that's how I say, are we even aware that we're doing it? Management, I don't know that they're aware. But then we look at the workers. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that, I'm going to go right back. I'm just going to go back and forth here. Goes right back to culture. And this is myself included. Don't think I'm discluding myself from this, because I'm not. If we're looking at the workers, me in general, my crew, the guys I've worked with, the guys I see online, the guys I know across the industry, we get so incredibly upset that the managers only come out and the first thing they point out is we're missing a wheel chock, instead of, wow, what an incredible job you're doing here. Look at that. And then, hey, some constructive criticism. Could you put both wheel chocks out next time? It's company policy. Oh yeah, no problem, right? It's easier to take that, so they get so mad that they don't do that. But God forbid you get a line crew that does this incredible job on, say, a 3-pot bank, new pole line construction, all kinds of stuff, and they're really proud of it. And they take a picture from afar and they post it on a page on Facebook like Line Junk or the Lineman Den or something like that. They might get 600 comments in 2 days. And out of 600 comments, 590 of them are, what do you think? Negative. Immediately pointing out the wrong. Tearing this guy apart, tearing this crew down. You don't know how to tie a tie wire. Look at that cross arm. Oh my God, who used a plumb bob there, making jokes. Can't see it from my house, you know. So we who get upset for our managers behaving like this behave the same way. So what does that tell us is that we're not choosing that necessarily. We're not even aware it's happening. It's our culture. It's the culture. Where does that culture come from? And I can give you a good idea. I'm going to grab this. We talk about this every time. Things like this technology, right? If I go back down to here, are we rule-based or critical thinkers or both? How does this change the metric? Does new tech like computers and smartphones make an impact on this metric? Smartphone. You know what you become on a smartphone? A telephone tough guy, right? A keyboard tough guy. I'm at a distance. I don't have to look this person in the eyes, and I see that this person's being a bully, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and be a bully as well. And we get so used to that, and it gets so ingrained in our heads that it's who we become. And it's sad. You know, this is an incredible piece of technology. There is a lot of positives that come out of this. Like anything you need to know at the tip of your fingers. But at the same time, there's unattended consequences. The unattended consequences are that it erodes the connections that we have with each other. It changes how we think and perceive things. We're less likely to get together in a group and more likely to sit by ourselves here. We're less likely to learn things and more likely to rely on this. And when we have a bunch of union guys behaving exactly, or even workers in general, I'm a union guy, behaving exactly like the management members and expecting them to be different, that's kind of insane, don't you think? How can we expect somebody to do something different than how we want to behave or how we're behaving ourselves? Maybe we can all look at it together and say, can I make a change? Am I behaving like this? And, you know, chances are for me, when I started looking at this and when I started talking to guys across the industry, yes, I was behaving like that. And yes, I still do on some occasion behave like that. How do we change it? By becoming aware. If I'm aware that it's happening, then I'm able to make that change. Now, I like the bullet point in the middle there. Are we rule-based or critical thinkers or both? Right? Let's think about that for a second. Let's think about that. What's an idea of rule-based and what's an idea of critical thinking skills? And I'll give you an example. When I came up in the industry, these didn't exist. There were the phones that had the long antennas that you pulled out, and then there were the flip phones that also had a long antenna that you pulled out and you could, you know, whip each other with. You could text and make phone calls. And in the late 90s when I started, you couldn't even text on them. You could make phone calls. So what that meant is, as a lineman, when I got a job, they would give me an address. And how do you think I got there? You guessed it. I pulled the map book out for Newcastle County, Delaware, and I would look, here's the street, and I would flip open in the back, find that street, and then I would go to the page, like 7D6. Now I'd open up the page 7, and the letters are on the top, and you follow that grid down to 6, and you sometimes have to pull the magnifying glass out and look in that little spot and find that street. And then you look, where's the highway compared to that? It's over here. All right, so I need to get on 95, and then I need to take the Harvey Road exit. And then I'll go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 streets, and I'm going to make a right, and then I'm going to pull over and check the map again. Right? So then I knew exactly where I was going. I have this in my head. I'm following directions from here. And I get there and I pull over and I look, all right, I need to go down 3 more streets, make a right, and then start looking on the right for the address. Right? The difference there is when I get to the address, if something happened, like I dropped my phone and broke it, I know where I am. I'm like, oh yeah, get back to 95. I'm just going to go here and make these turns, make a right and head on down. You know, the interstate will be right there. I know what town I'm in. I know what's nearby because I'm paying attention, because I'm following my head as directions. Rule-based. I put the address in my phone and it gives me step-by-step instruction, and I'm driving and not paying attention where I'm going. It's just saying, take this exit. And I take the exit. Then you drop your phone and break it, and half the time you don't even know what town you're in. I know what county I'm in. You know, you have to call 911. What's your address, sir? I don't know. I'm in Newcastle County somewhere. Well, that narrows it down, right? That's the truth. That is a very good example between rule-based and critical thinking. Now, the question is, as workers, are we still critical thinkers? Because let's see, if we're only teaching the why, or the how and not the why, then we're propagating, we're pushing that, we're exacerbating that, that rule-based theory. But when we teach both and we're using our heads and not the rule, so the rule's good, right? If we're going to work and we're going to follow the rule, that's good. But we also need to understand it in our heads, follow that critical thinking behind what we're doing. Because sometimes there's an exception to the rule, right? The rule's not always going to work. And if we're not aware of that and we're only following the rule, what ends up happening is there's an incident. So the critical thinking behind it is really, really important. Another couple of good examples of statistics in the industry, if you go to South America, and I don't know why this is, I just know it exists. They are generally speaking rule-based. I mean, those guys will have a set of documents that tell them how to do everything. I mean, they have a set of documents almost for everything in the industry, step-by-step instructions on how to do it. And they will not deviate from that scheme one tiny little bit, even if you begged them to. So what you see there is true. You have very little incidents, but then you have fatalities because there's exceptions to the rules. That's why I think it's important here in the United States, how we've always been, that we are both rule-based and critical thinkers. We understand the rules. We know why they exist, but we also understand the electricity, and we can see the dangers involved with it. Now, thinking about that, if we look over here, I got some training setups that I brought in, and I just want to kind of go over some things, because when it comes to training, I think it's important. I'm going to just walk back here. I think it's vitally important that we're not just teaching out of a book, whether it's OSHA 1910-269 Appendix C, which kind of this revolves around. This is a dirt box, which I have no dirt in, but it's a dirt box nevertheless. And it's one of those things where I can teach the class and I can tell guys, we're just going to equipotential ground. We're not going to box ourselves in anymore because it's dangerous. But that's not effective because, well, hold on a second now. I've been working under these conditions for 35 years and never had a problem, right? We got to show them. And you can show them with things like this, what happens with circulating currents. You can actually measure it on here, and you can show them what happens with distance. And just a quick little demonstration I want to do here to show you guys, and that would be, I got this light, and I have these lines hooked up to power, and if you see here, I have a ground. It's jumped from the conductor that I'm going to energize to the neutral. And this light's hooked there. And one of the questions I have gotten asked 100 times, I'm doing grounding, and by the way, I didn't come up with this. This is something that was passed down to me by a gentleman named Brady Hansen, who will be here in January and I highly recommend you tune in for that because he's probably one of the top trainers in the world. I feel confident in saying that. So this right here, I've been asked, does it matter if you're working on the line or the load side of your ground? And I've heard guys in the industry say, no, because electricity travels at this speed and the fuse opens, so it's so fast that no, it doesn't matter. But if I turn this on, and now I got this light on with a ground hooked up, and if I start sliding this light bulb, you'll see as I get closer to this ground, this light will get dimmer and dimmer because there's less impedance and resistance in parallel with this light bulb until I get up to it and that light's out. Right? If I move it away, there becomes more and more resistance and impedance in parallel and that light comes back on. Now, let's try that the other way around. And this is a fantastic demonstration just to show, and I know it seems like we're kind of all over the place here, but you know, the point of this is to say there's better ways to do it and training is included. You know, I want to show people the how and the why the rule exists, why safety best practices exist. I'm going to put the light bulb down here. Now, this one, I know because I've done this 100 times. Oh, I didn't have my other neutral hooked up. I've done this 100 times. This is much, much harder to get that light bulb to light up, even if you can. And when I get it turned on, we'll see if we can get that light to come on, but I also want you guys to pay attention to this coil of wire right here so you know that this isn't bullcrap. This is a real life experiment. Okay, the light is barely on. Turn it, tap this here, move that around. I don't want to melt the ground there. So you can see, all right, light's on, still got the light on, and look at this. And you can see the heat just blasting. You can see this starting to turn red hot. So I got a dead short here, and past the dead short, past that ground, I still have that light bulb on. And if that's not an eye-opening experience to see that, I don't know what is. And you know, that's one of the things I try to take equipment like this, whether it's grounding or rigging or transformers, into a particular shop and say, no, a ground does not protect your life. The purpose of a ground is to make a fuse or a breaker operate. That's it. Your bond, your equipotential bond, is what protects your life. And, you know, being able to show somebody, not just tell them, show them, is so incredibly important. And when we look at things like these little books right here, these little pocket guides that me and a few other guys made, and I'm going to say their names, it's Brady Hansen and Pete Lewis from Local 42. Pete came up with this idea because we're trying to really revolutionize like grounding and bonding in the industry and a couple other things. And Pete's idea was, you know, these newer guys, they like watching TikTok videos. So, but they also need the book. So what happens if we show them in the book and we have a QR code on each page that takes you to a video of a cool experiment, short video. So these books, none of us have made a dime off of this. In fact, we've all lost money because we paid to have them made. We paid our time to get up there, the film team, all of that stuff, and they're given out for free to everybody in the industry that wants them. And you know, they have been wildly successful, and this is just one of those things where you can give back. And the passion that I have for training is only growing and growing. It's something that I want to continue. And you know, being able to surround myself with smarter people than myself, or people who are more equipped or have more experience like Brady, and have him pass something like this down to me is incredible. It's something that, you know, I can take this and pass it to the next guy, and he can improve on it. And then he can pass it to the next guy and he can improve on it. Another good demonstration is, I'll use Brent for this one, if you want to come over here. So, and we'll talk about why we're going to do this demonstration. It's 25 pounds. You feel that? It's 25 pounds, right? So now grab that shotgun stick right there. And this is a good one for a young kid with a 8-foot shotgun. We're going to grab it right here. Go ahead and grab it. Now, if you put your hand back here where it's supposed to be, and how much heavier is that to pick up like that?
About 4 times.
Yeah, right, about 4 times heavier. Now, the reason I like this demonstration, Brent, is one of the number one things in this industry, pieces of equipment that is the most dangerous, that we have a lot of incidents is a digger derrick, right? A digger derrick. And what happens is, we know how it works, but we're never explained the dangers behind the forces and torques that you put behind that. And why that becomes a big problem is, if you're picking that little 25-pound weight up, and imagine an 8-foot shotgun, you see these young kids and the shotgun's bowing and he's straining trying to pick that thing up. And if it's 25 pounds and you have 6 feet sticking out in front of you, well, that's 25 times 6. And then if your one hand's 1 foot back, well, you take 25 pounds off, and that's the weight you're left with. So the guys of the digger derricks get this thing called the finger of God complex. And that's where they can't feel the weight. They just know that they can pull on this lever and that winch keeps on moving up. And when it stops, because it can't pick up anymore, they can push this lever and push the neck out and gain more winch. And, you know, one of the things I always try to ask guys is, what's an idea of like an unknown load, right? Well, an unknown load would be like trying to pull a pole. And when you're trying to pull a pole out of the ground with a digger derrick, what is that, 10,000 pounds? Maybe. If it's 10,000 pounds and you put 10,000 pounds of pressure and you have 25 feet of boom sticking out past your hydraulic turret, and then it's only 3 feet past the stationary spot, well, that's 22 times 10,000. That's how much torque we're putting at the base of that truck. And then when you start rocking it back and forth, now you have hundreds of thousands of pounds of torque, and you're swinging it back and forth. And what ends up happening is the boom breaks off, and the guy's sitting on it, and it rolls on top of him and kills him. And, you know, it's one of those things that right there really helps to drive home. And it's a simple task to do. You get Bluetooth dynos. We can go over knots. And then, what are the stronger knots? What equipment is not good to be used in the industry, like say a carabiner, right? If we take a carabiner out, you see a lot of guys using carabiners for rigging applications. Well, we can take that, put between 2 trucks on a Bluetooth dyno and stand in the clear and pull that apart and see what it broke at, compared to, you know, a regular shackle that has a working load limit. So, you know, and I'm just giving a couple of ideas of things that we can do to make training better, and kind of have a little bit of the rule-based, but also have critical thinking skills, because I'm watching it happen. I know what the consequences are. And for anybody who's ever said, I've worked in between grounds for 35 years and never had a problem, well, I bet nobody's ever energized a circuit on you while you're standing up in a critical position either. So how do you know, right? You don't. One of the bigger things I'm also seeing in the industry is there's fatalities every year that are, you know, down in like Florida during hurricanes. I'm sorry, I got the gnats just eating me alive right now. So you're down in Florida for hurricanes, and every year you see fatalities based on touch before test or something of that nature. It's a lot of times it's because we're not tagging right. We're not telling people where we are. We might think that we have a whole circuit, and lo and behold, they give that circuit to somebody else, and we're working in the backyard out of sight from the fuse, and we don't put any proper tags on there, and somebody goes and closes that fuse in on us. It's not everybody thinks the same. There's a lot of training that we can do, demonstrating purposes. And again, these books, if you want these books, get a hold of Brent. Most of the tests that are done in here are done with his testing equipment. In fact, all of them. The grounds tester, more specifically, we're able to pump hundreds of amps of current through sections of wire and equipment to see how much voltage drop. And the incredible thing is you can actually hook up a bracket ground setting in real life with that tester, and you can measure circulating current. You can actually see the circulating current, what it differs from the unit to what's in the air, and it's almost spooky when you see it. Just to go back quickly through what we talked about: culture, humble, hungry, smart. Humble meaning, I'm humble. Hungry meaning I'm ambitious. I have passion behind what I do. I want to continually get better. And smart meaning I have good people skills, right? This is something that I'm able to talk to people. I'm able to talk to people in a way that makes them feel comfortable. And I'm able to empathize with them if they have something going on in their life, like a sick grandmother, or they argued with their wife. I'm able to understand and read that, and that makes for a good work environment. Hiring the right people for the right job. Now, sometimes they're already hired, but that's where that humble, hungry, and smart can come in. If we're aware of it, if people watching this, if you ask yourself those three questions: am I humble? Meaning, do I think a lot about myself, or do I think more about my fellows? If I'm a crew leader and I have a crew, am I giving the congratulations to the crew for a job well done, or am I patting myself on the back? Am I ambitious? Sometimes do I think about the work when I'm home? And somebody might say, oh, that's a bad habit to get into. I don't think so. I think that there's a balance. There is a life-work balance. But if you're passionate about what you do, it becomes your life. And so am I passionate about what I do? Or do I dread going into work in the morning? And am I pleasant to be around? Or do people generally not go near me? Right? Ask ourselves those questions, because if you have a problem with one of those, it's easy to change. You can self-diagnose it. You can make yourself aware of it, and you can be willing to change it. So I appreciate everybody listening, and thanks for inviting me on again, Brent. I appreciate it.